Welcome to the Bible for Us. My name is Justin Reed.
And I'm Tyler Mayfield.
We're professors of Hebrew Bible, Old Testament at Louisville Seminary. And today, we're talking about contexts, reading the Bible with historical and literary contexts in mind. Now, contexts are something that is necessary for any sort of interpretation. Everything that we understand, we can't just understand on its own, but we're always looking at it in a broader context. There's all kinds of contexts that we can use to understand one piece of information. When we try to understand the Bible, the historical context is extremely important.
The historical context for interpreting the Bible is important because we know that the Bible is an ancient document. It wasn't written just yesterday, or even in our own lifetimes. I would say one of the big events that happens in the Old Testament that really influences the Bible is the Babylonian exile. So the Babylonian Empire comes in and destroys the tiny ancient kingdom of Judah. And this historical event is devastating for the people. And it is reflected in the literature that they produce. They think about this event, they write about this event, and they wonder about their God in light of this event. And so this historical exile creates a real moment in history for the people to consider who they are and who their God is.
So it seems like what we're saying here is that a big traumatic experience for the people who put together the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible had a big impact on what they end up putting in the Bible. For the New Testament, there's something similar. If we think about the destruction of the temple in the year 70 CE, then that's a similar big traumatic event that has an impact on what we see in the New Testament. Since each of our Gospels were written after that event, the writers, in some ways, write something that comments on and is influenced by that massive moment in their history. When we read the New Testament, when we read the Old Testament, we are reading literature that has been informed by these historical contexts, and so it's important for us to understand those big events and other elements of history that made a difference in what's in our Bible. We have to think about the fact that real people, at some point, put pen to paper or quill to parchment or however you want to say it, to actually write down the scriptures that we now have. We got to ask ourselves, who were these people? What social class did they come from? What background, thoughts, experiences, beliefs informed what they put into the text? So even though we in faith communities can assert that the Bible is divinely inspired, it's also helpful to see how that divine inspiration is mixed in with the human authors that God used to bring us these scriptures. So when we're thinking about the fact that real authors played a role in our Bible coming together, then we also should think about the ways in which their understandings don't match ours today, and what you'll do as an interpreter of the Bible considering that factor. If you think about something like biology or something like the weather, we understand things that they didn't. And so when you see a text that says God literally opened floodgates so that rain would fall, you might not interpret it literally, even though the original authors might have believed that that's how rain falls. When you see a text that has to do with slavery, and in our Bible it treats slavery as normal, considering the ways that we've come to understand the evils of slavery, we might read that text informed by our experiences and our knowledge of who God is and who we are. Understanding the differences between their historical context and our own gives us the ability to have informed decisions when we interpret those differences.
So we've looked at how the Bible is an ancient document, and therefore it needs to be interpreted in its historical context. But now we turn to the Bible as a literary document, as a piece of literature. One of the ways that we can pay attention to the literary context of the Bible is to talk about its genres. One way to think about genre is to use the example of the mail that we receive every day. When we go through the mail, we discern what we're actually looking at. Sometimes we may get a letter from our parents or grandparents, or we may get a package in the mail. Usually when we see these pieces of mail, we realize what they are, whether they're an advertisement or whether they're trying to get us to buy new life insurance. These are different genres. The Bible also has different genres. We have Psalms and Proverbs, Gospels, letters. Understanding the genre that's in the Bible will help us not to misread the passage. If we take a poem and we try to read it like it's a science textbook or it's a history book, then we're going to misunderstand that poem. Just like if we take an advertisement that we receive in the mail and we try to read it like it's a personal letter from our grandmother, we're not going to understand that advertisement. Is that too ridiculous?
No, that's perfect. Now, reading well has to do with learning to identify genres and to take the cues from a genre on what reading well would mean for that particular genre. But if we think about narratives, there's also a lot of potential for us to read differently. And I think that that's one of the powerful things about treating the Bible as scripture. When we pick up a narrative, we can say, okay, we're reading the book of Judges, and the Israelites are the main characters, and we're going to align our beliefs with everything that the Israelites do. But we could also read that same narrative and say, well, I feel like I can read this text well by asking questions about the perspective of a Canaanite in this passage, or a Philistine, or a woman, or whoever it is that is not automatically, according to this genre, the main character. And so when you do that, you actually find potential to make connections from this text to real lived communities today who find themselves similarly marginalized by the dominant narratives that we live by in this world. For me as a black person in the United States, I see the value of reading with those who are marginalized in the text because it matches the ways in which this country, our society, often marginalizes me and my people based on our race. So reading with genres can help us, and there's also ways to read in genres that are more creative and more powerful for a specific context.
Context help us take seriously the Bible as both an ancient document and as a literary document. When we read without context, we can often come up with all sorts of meanings, many of which are not helpful to us. But when we place the text within these two particular contexts, we often come up with more helpful interpretations.
Having some understanding of the ancient nature of the Bible, having some understanding of the literary genres that we're looking at, can give us a strong anchor to have deep meaning in the interpretations that we generate for ourselves and the communities that we serve.